Hello and welcome to a new game. This one is from TCEC, where League One is about to end and the first two places qualify to the Premier Division to play with the big boys: Stockfish, Leela, Elstein, the two Komodos, and Houdini. And in the second place we have a good old friend of ours, Ethereal. But in the first place we have a newcomer, a relatively newcomer, a new kid on the block, called Stoofvlees or something like that. I have no idea how to pronounce correctly his name. All I know that this is some delicious food, probably the favorite of its author, who is none other than Giancarlo Pascuto, the author of the Schenk chess engine, and also the original author of the Leela Go project. So it's a big name in the industry. And that makes me think that Stoofvlees, or whatever it's called, is probably going to be a serious contender in the future. Maybe I should call it Stoofvlee, because it rhymes with souffle, and that's also food, so I wouldn't be far off, right? Or maybe I should just call it Stew, because Stew is cute. And today's game is actually against Ethereal, who is currently in the second place. And this was a Nimzo-Indian, a very, very nice attack by Stu, as we'll see. The game started with d4, and after knight f6, c4 and e6, we are into the Nimzo-Indian defense, where black's idea is to play bishop b4 check and pin this knight that eventually will land on c3. And that way prevent white from playing e4 and creating a very, very strong center. And sometimes black even gives up this bishop for this knight and creates two double pawns here for white. That's why white sometimes plays the anti-Nimzo with knight f3, where if bishop b4 comes, then white can play either bishop d2 or knight d2. And of course, in this case, black can't double the pawns on the c-file. Another option for white is to play actually g3 and go into the Catalan opening. In this one, however, we have the main line with knight c3, and after bishop b4, white has a lot of options. He can play e3 or bishop g5, knight f3, even f3. Or queen c2 if he wants to prevent black from doubling the pawns. But in this game we have a3. This is also a variation where white is not concerned at all about doubled pawns, and he just wants to get the bishop pair and try then to kill black on the dark squares. The game continued now with bishop takes on c3, b takes on c3, and now c5. Black is attacking white's center and is also blocking these double pawns here that he wants to attack. And of course, taking here would be a big mistake for white, because now his center is completely gone, and after queen a5, black gets back anyway his pawn. And also d5 is not much better, because this gives up d5 square, and these two pawns are not looking very good. So after c5, here the game continued with e3. White maintains this very strong center and controls a lot of central squares. And here the game continued with castles, and here we actually reached the end of the book. Stoofvlees now continued with bishop d3, and he wants to play e4 and even e5 if allowed. Ethereal continued with d6, which makes a lot of sense. She doesn't have a dark squared bishop, so she's trying to put the pawns on the dark squares, and then those pawns would work very nicely together with the remaining light squared bishop. Stu got in e4, and of course the idea is e5, so we have knight c6 stopping that, knight e2, and now b6. Black's plan is to attack this weak pawn on c4, which cannot be defended by another pawn, and he can do so by playing bishop a6 and knight a5 and rook c8, and then eventually take here on d4 and then pick up the pawn on c4. Stu continued with castles, and now after h6 and f4 we have bishop a6. And in this position most grandmasters try to attack black with e5 and try to get something before black is ready to take on c4. But in this game Stu actually played rook f3, basically saying that he's not concerned with the c4 pawn, he's going for the attack by lifting this rook and trying to put it on g3 or h3. Ethereal continued with his plan, rook c8, and now after rook h3 he took on d4, and after c takes on d4 and knight a5, Ethereal is finally ready to take on c4 and win a pawn. But now came f5 with the obvious intention of sacking this bishop on h6. And if this idea with bishop h6 is a working idea, then maybe black's plan of trying to get the c4 pawn by misplacing these two pieces here on the a file maybe is not the best idea. I don't know. The game continued now with bishop takes on c4, and now we have bishop takes on h6. And after g takes and rook takes, Ethereal is not impressed at all. He gives this at 0-0-0, but Stoofvlees is quite happy with his position. Stu's idea is to bring this queen to the g file ASAP and made the black king, so here Ethereal played knight a7, trying to bring the queen out first to the g file. But now came h4, taking away the g5 square, and now after bishop takes on d3, Stu is now very happy with her position, and this might have been maybe a mistake, because now instead of recapturing the bishop, Stu went for the attack with knight g3, and of course his idea now is to play queen g4 check, and after king h8 he can continue with queen h5 and just quite simply take on h7, and the mate is unstoppable. Stoofvlees is happier and happier with his position, but Ethereal still evaluates this at 0. And he now played here f6 with the idea to defend this knight laterally with rook c7. Now if queen g4 check, then after king h8 and queen h5, queen e7 defends everything and Ethereal would be doing fine. But after f6 instead of queen g4, Stu continued with knight h5, and now he's threatening queen g4, queen g7 mate. So we have rook c7, and Stu finally took back the bishop on d3. And now since f take on e6 is threatened, we have e5. Stu responded with d5, and now we have rook f7. Ethereal is defending on the 7th rank. Stu continued with rook f1, and his intention is to bring this other rook in the attack. We now have king f8 and rook g6. And Stu's idea here is now that if this king is hiding on e7, then he can play knight g7 and knight e6, and that knight would be a complete monster there on e6. Playing here king e8 is also not very good for Ethereal, because after rook g8 and knight f8 he would be tied up even more, and actually this is not better than king e7. But this now allows knight g7, and after rook c8 getting out of this fork, we have knight e6, queen d7, and look at this knight, look at this octopus attacking in all directions. This knight is much stronger than any other piece now on the board. Stu continued with rook f3. He's still a piece down, but this knight is worth at least 2 knights. Rook h8, rook g3, queen c8, trying to activate the queen with some checks, maybe getting some perpetual or something, but we now have queen e3 guarding the c1 square, knight c4, queen f2, and now knight f8 attacking the rook. We have rook g7, and taking now the knight would lose for black. For example, there's rook f7 check, and if now the king takes, then f takes on e6 check, king e8, and now queen takes on f6, and this is now a mating attack here. Best is rook f8, but now white has rook g8, with the idea that after rook takes on g8 there's queen f7 check, king d8, e7 check, king c7, promotion with check, king b8, and now queen takes on g8. And after the queens are exchanged, this is a completely winning endgame for white. Alternatively, instead of taking the knight on e6, taking the rook is also leading to mate for white, because there's now rook g7 check, and after king e8 and queen g3, white threatens rook c7, queen g7 and queen e7 mate, or even just quite simply rook e7 check and queen g7 check and so on. For example, best here is knight e3, but now after rook c7 the black queen has to give herself up. Otherwise, if let's say queen a6 trying to get some counter chances here, then there's this very cute rook e7 check forcing the king to take, and now after queen g7 check and king e8 there's knight c7 winning down the queen, and after that black still has two pieces attacked here and white is winning. So instead of taking the rook or the knight on e6, Ethereal tried to maintain a rook on the 7th rank and played rook h7, but now came rook takes on h7, knight takes on h7, and after king h2, Ethereal's task is very difficult. Stu is threatening to get into the c file with the heavy pieces like rook c3, and defending this is very difficult. Here Ethereal played queen b8, and her idea is to defend these dark squares here and also try to maintain this knight on the c file and not allow this rook to penetrate. But now after a4, Ethereal is forced to play a6 in order to be able to play b5 after rook c3. Now b5 would be good, but Stu continued here with a5, and now b5 doesn't work at all, because this diagonal is now weakened and this queen can get into a7. a7 is guarded by the queen, but after rook g8 deflecting the queen, if the queen takes, then this is a mate in 4 actually. After king e8, queen b8 check, king d7, queen c7 check, king back, and now queen d8 mate. So taking here with the queen on g8 doesn't work. Black can try knight f8, but now after g4, black is all tied up and he's in a Zugzwang here. g5 is coming with g6 or g takes on f6, and black's position would collapse. Alternatively, instead of blocking with the knight, maybe blocking with the rook would be possible. But again, knight takes, and now the h pawn is marching up the board, and black is helpless against that idea. So actually here after a5, b5 doesn't work in any variation. So Ethereal played here knight a5, but now came queen c2, and now this queen is penetrating into black's position. We have b5, and now rook g8, again with the same idea of deflecting the queen. Here Ethereal played knight f8, but now came g4, and again this idea with g5, g6 or g takes on f6 wins for white. Ethereal tried here queen b6, trying to activate the queen somehow, but Stu played here g5, and after knight c4 we have g6, and the black rook doesn't have squares, so in order to save the rook, Ethereal had to take on e6, but now came d takes on e6, rook f8, and after rook g7 the king had to go to e8, and now Stu played queen e2, guarding the e3 square and also eyeing the h5 square, and Stu has ideas like rook d7, g7 and queen h5 check. So Ethereal didn't really have any choice, and after d5 and rook d7 she had to go for a queen exchange with queen e3. But the queen exchange doesn't help much, because now there's rook a7 threatening g7, rook g8, and then winning the rook with rook a8 check. So Ethereal tried here knight g4 check, and after king h3, knight h6. But here's Stu took on d5, and after knight takes on f5, he played d6, threatening mate in 1 with rook a8. So Ethereal didn't have a choice. She had to take this pawn on d6, but this now allowed again g7, and after rook g8, rook a8 check, and Stu wins Ethereal's rook. And after knight c4, Stu played rook a8, and nothing can stop this pawn from becoming a beautiful queen. The king took on e6, and now we have a new queen. King d6, rook a6 check, king c5, rook takes on f6, knight a5, queen e6. And now after knight c4, in order to show Leela that he can also throw, Stu took this knight on c4. It looks like all neural networks like to throw. Well, actually the truth is that now after b takes on c4, Stu entered a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-man table-based position, which shows clearly the path to victory for white. And at this point the game was also adjudicated because TCEC uses a 6-man table base to adjudicate completely winning positions. Nice game! A very cool and deadly Kingside Attack here by Stoofvlees, aka Stu. I'm very impressed by his play. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out some of the other games. You may enjoy them. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.